You've probably heard of an economic miracle, right? A country that just skyrockets from rags to riches at an unbelievable speed. It's an amazing story to watch. But what happens after the miracle? Well, more often than not, there's a really painful hangover. In this explainer, we are diving headfirst into that exact cycle. The incredible booms that somehow plant the seeds for their own spectacular busts. So let's pull back the curtain on the miracle and take a hard look at what it really cost.
And a lot of our inspiration for this comes from the work of author and former JP Morgan analyst Zhao Lin. Her whole mission is to cut through all the confusing jargon and explain these huge, complex global economies in a way that just makes sense. She wants us to feel the temperature of an economy, beyond just the cold data.
And that really gets to the heart of our question today. We're looking at three completely different countries, right? Different continents, different cultures, different histories, but they all share this one incredibly dramatic story, a period of unbelievable growth, followed by a crisis that left them staggering for years, sometimes for decades. So, what on earth happened?
Okay, so to really get the hangover, you first have to understand the party, and what a party it was. Let's take a look at the blueprint for these miracles, the common ingredients that created such world-changing growth, especially after the Second World War. Japan is the textbook case. After being absolutely devastated in World War II, it launched into one of the most incredible economic transformations in human history. For almost 20 years straight, its economy grew by an average of over 10% a year. Just think about that for a second. The speed was so insane it just left economists worldwide with their jaws on the floor. They had to coin a new term for it, the Japanese economic miracle.
And this wasn't just a Japanese story. Take South Korea, one of the poorest countries on Earth after the Korean War. They followed a remarkably similar playbook. The strategy was crystal clear. Focus on making high-quality stuff for the rest of the world. Tap into your smart and hardworking population and have the government steer the whole ship, picking which industries to back and which companies to champion.
Now, this government guidance wasn't some abstract idea. It was carried out by these massive corporate champions. In Japan, you had the Keiretsu, these huge industrial groups, all centered around a powerful bank. Think Mitsubishi, think Mitsui. In South Korea, it was the Chaebol, family-run giants like Samsung and Hyundai that got enormous support from the state. These were the literal engines of the miracle.
But, as you can probably guess, this kind of hyper-focused, government-led growth, it came with a price. The very systems that made the miracles possible were also creating these deep, hidden flaws. Flaws that you couldn't see during the good times, but were basically just time bombs waiting to go off.
That really tight relationship between the government and its corporate champions eventually warped into something we call crony capitalism. It created a system where success became less about having the best product and more about who you knew in the government. These giant companies became too big to fail, and the line between business and politics just got completely blurred. It was a system that was incredibly good at growing, but also incredibly fragile.
So in Japan, that fragility turned into a gigantic asset bubble. In the 1980s, after a big currency deal with the US, Japan slashed its interest rates. Well, that just unleashed a tsunami of cheap money. The Keiretsu banks, at the heart of the system, started lending like there was no tomorrow. So where did all that cash go? Straight into stocks and real estate. And that's where you get this dangerous feedback loop. Prices go up, people use their now valuable property as collateral to get even bigger loans, which they use to buy more property, pushing prices even higher. You see the problem.
Now, over in Greece, the path was different, but the theme of a hidden flaw was exactly the same. Its own economic miracle from the 50s and 60s had pretty much fizzled out. To get into the Eurozone and get access to much cheaper borrowing, it had to meet these really strict debt limits. The problem? It didn't. So it hired Goldman Sachs to, cook the books, using these complex financial instruments to hide billions in debt. So the flaw here wasn't a credit bubble, it was just straight-up deception.
And this, right here, is where the party screeches to a halt, and the hangover begins. Whether it's a government changing interest rates or a global crisis hitting, eventually something happens that shines a spotlight on those hidden flaws, and that's when the whole system can come crashing down.
For Japan, the trigger was the central bank finally deciding to raise interest rates to try and gently deflate the bubble. Well, it didn't deflate, it popped. The stock market collapsed with a speed that was just breathtaking. In just 2 years, the Nikkei index lost more than half its value. I mean, get this. At the peak of the bubble, the tiny patch of land under the Imperial Palace in Tokyo was supposedly worth more than all the real estate in California. It was just complete insanity.
For Greece, the trigger was the 2008 global financial crisis. All of a sudden, lenders got really scared and started looking very closely at who they've been giving money to, and when Greece's hidden debts came to light, the market just slammed shut. The country was thrown into a brutal crisis that saw its entire economy shrink by a quarter. A devastating, devastating collapse.
And this quote just captures that moment perfectly. During the good times, the boom times, everyone looks like a genius. All the flaws, the crazy debt, the cronyism, the accounting tricks, it's all hidden by rising prices and easy money. But when that crisis hits, the tide goes out, and you see exactly who was taking all the reckless risks.
You know, a crash is one thing. It's dramatic. But the real story, the real human cost, is in the hangover that comes after. And this isn't some quick recession. We're talking about a long, painful, grinding period of adjustment that can define an entire generation. Japan is the ultimate cautionary tale here. Its crash led to what people now call the lost 30 years. That system of kairetsu, which was so amazing at building things up, was terrible at letting things fail. The banks just kept propping up failing zombie companies for years, trapping capital and preventing new, innovative businesses from ever getting off the ground. The result? Decades of economic stagnation.
And this hangover looks different depending on the country, really shaped by the miracle that came before it. In Japan, that too-big-to-fail corporate culture led to stagnation. For Greece, the hidden debt forced brutal government spending cuts, austerity, and sky-high unemployment. And in South Korea, that relentless top-down pressure for growth that created their miracle, it left behind a legacy of immense social strain.
The hyper-competitive culture that fueled the miracle on the Han River has created a society that is under an unbelievable amount of stress. For many, life feels like one endless exam to get into the best school, to get a job at one of the all-powerful chaebols. And the consequences of this pressure are just stark. The highest suicide rate in the developed world, the lowest birth rate on the entire planet, and some of the longest working hours anywhere.
And that's why this all matters so much. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. The hangover from these crises is deeply, deeply human. It shapes an entire society, it creates intense pressure, and it can last for decades, affecting the daily lives of millions of ordinary people who had absolutely nothing to do with creating the problem in the first place.
And that brings us right to the core lesson of this whole story. It's a powerful, repeating pattern throughout economic history. The very things that create the dizzying highs of the boom, the easy money, the powerful partnerships between government and corporations, the belief that this time is different, are the exact same things that guarantee the devastating crash. Which really leaves us with one final and I think provocative question. As we watch new economic powers rise around the world today, creating their own modern-day miracles, are they finding a new, more stable way to grow? Or are they just mixing the cocktail for their own inevitable and incredibly painful hangover?